The Las Vegas Aces are going to sweep the Phoenix Mercury and win the 2025 WNBA Finals.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, Clea Butler here, joined alongside Sophia Jones. Thank you so much for tuning in with us, your daily podcast for all things women's basketball. We have a lot to go over today as we just concluded Game 3 of the WNBA Finals. Before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to fanduel.com to get started. Now, there are a lot of bright spots in this game. A couple of dark spots as well. We'll get into a little bit more about what the Aces did well as a team because we see that they have just clicked on all cylinders. What is going on with the Phoenix Mercury? But again, we have to give them credit in this game as well. But first, we have to go over the big A, not the little one. A'ja Wilson did not come to play. Well, actually, she did, but in a different way. A'ja Wilson recorded her ninth 30-point playoff game, the most of all time. Also, her fourth 30-point playoff game in these playoffs, most in a single postseason. Ended today with 34 points and 14 rebounds. She's unreal, like genuinely unreal to watch.
Exactly. There's a reason why her shoe commercial goes, A'ja Wilson's on top, top, top. She can't be stop, 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 because the Phoenix Mercury had no answer for her tonight. I mean, even coming down to that game winner where she was double teamed, both players were right there. It was DeWanna Bonner, Alyssa Thomas, both incredible defenders, had great verticality, but no, she just hit it. So an incredible performance by the MVP. And I just continue to be astounded by her and just the way that she's putting this team on her back on both ends of the floor, just doing what needs to get done.
I want to go to that fourth quarter where she was able to put the Aces ahead by 2 and essentially, well, she did end the game with that shot, but she got the ball. I want to give the credit to the Aces too and Becky Hammon for first being able to call that timeout and seeing that the team was stagnant. There wasn't really anything running offensively. And, a lot of teams would have kind of just allowed that to, play out. You've trusted your team the whole game. I'm glad that she called that timeout, seeing that, Alyssa Thomas was about to slide over as soon as Jackie Young was going to try and get a layup. So right timing, but even more credit to Chelsea Gray, one of the best passers on the team, being able to get it into A'ja Wilson, and clearly the most credit to A'ja Wilson, who had 2 defenders over her. And post game, she was like, truthfully, I didn't even see who was there. I just knew I had to get a bucket, and that's all that I was focused on. She gets the ball, whoop, whoop, and it's over with. Like, truthfully, I just watched it. I was like, there's no way. Like, I understand she's 6'4", but she's still shooting over DeWanna Bonner, who's also 6'4", Alyssa Thomas, who's like 6'2", and the game's just over from there. And it's just like nobody's actually shocked by it happening. Everybody just knew that she needed to have the ball and the game would be over.
Exactly. And they've said it on a couple broadcasts now, but how A'ja Wilson has worked on her footwork and post moves with her boyfriend, Bam Adebayo, who plays for the Miami Heat in the MNBA. And and I mean, just the way that she's so surgical with her exact foot placement and the way that she's really able to stay on her toes. She's like a ballerina almost at certain times and just, like you said, whoop, whoop. And then she shoots and it's all on her toes. And it's incredible to watch, but just so much credit to her teammates and her coaching staff for putting in her in those situations and for her doing all the work. I mean, it's just that final shot was just crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, it's late here. People sleeping, but I was trying to keep the noise down, but I couldn't help myself.
I also love that you said MNBA. But even to your point, my dad had come in while I was watching the game. My dad's a former professional basketball player himself, and he was asking just like how tall Asia was and stuff, and he pays attention. But he was comparing her to Sylvia Fowles, which I thought was an interesting comparison. And he was just saying, some of the bit, and my dad is 6'11", so he understands what it takes to be a big. But he was just saying that the versatility of Asia Wilson, and to your point, her footwork and just her athleticism being 6'4", and being in this position. And to your point, again, her footwork has greatly improved every single season, but that's what's made her even more of a threat. Because truthfully, if she didn't have that footwork that she's worked on in these final seconds of the game right now, it could have looked completely different for her. But that footwork allowed her to create that quick separation, have a step back, and even just her length and ability to shoot off 1 foot too, and just have she also is shooting a fade. Like she's fading away from the basket and shooting over 2 defenders. And it's so funny because Holly Rowe literally asked the questions that I have in my head. She makes this stuff look so easy, but it is not easy at all to accomplish these things and win the game on top of it.
Yeah, like you talk about having that clutch gene. I mean, to just stay in your own element, not get sped up, because again, there were 2 players right there when said knocked down that shot when it went through the net, there was point 0.3 seconds left. So it was like half a second away from not even counting. So just for her to like do that, and again, it was built off of all the execution that she did throughout the whole game. It started in the first quarter where she really just had such a quick start, and then it continued the whole game, and she finished with 34 points, 14 rebounds. I mean, there's not much more you can ask from the MVP in a championship performance.
Exactly. Not much more you can ask of her, but she didn't do this all alone. And Asia, she is a very humble player. She's confident but humble, and she's going to tell you that her teammates helped her out, and they did. Jackie Young, 21 points, 9 assists, but Jewell Loyd is who really stood out to me when we think about bench production for these teams. She had 16 points, 4 of 4 threes in the first quarter. And she's the first player in the WNBA history to make 4 threes in just the first quarter. Now, when I think about Jewell Loyd and when we talk about Gold Mamba, this is the standard that I have for her. So when people were questionable about her during the beginning of the season and kind of just, what her performance was, just like, listen, it's Jewell Loyd. She's going to figure it out. And the push that she has had within these playoffs and just coming back to her true self and what she has mentioned, playing with joy and finding a love for basketball once again, it translates into her play. And her threes today were also nuts. Like when she made her third one, I was like, oh, she's not kidding.
No, she was shooting unconscious in that first quarter. And I think even if you look all the way back towards those threes that she hit, the Phoenix Mercury, again, it seems like every single game this series, they've started off really hot. And it looked like at the beginning, okay, they're starting off well. Looks like they're going to get one. But then Jewell hit those threes. And I think that really helped to reinvigorate the whole Las Vegas Aces team to help get themselves into that game. And then, of course, have the big lead. But those threes were so huge. I mean, hand in her face, body right there. It was just incredible how quick she was able to pull and just the confidence that she shot every shot with. And that's the type of confidence that also when you're in an away environment, in a crowd like Phoenix Mercury's arena, to take the crowd out of it and just not let that just anticipation and energy build was huge as well.
We're going to talk a little bit more about what the Aces did well on a team level right after this. Most people can't name their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or their properties or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's all in one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives, just like us. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can identify what you're saving as much as you thought. Monarch helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from your past jobs. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. All right, so we talked about A'ja Wilson. We talked about her support system as well, but we just need to speak about what the Aces did well on a team level. We've mentioned it before. They're really clicking on all cylinders, and we have seen that a lot of their offensive effort has come from their defensive effort. So another interesting point is that we've seen different defenses every single game. They've come out with different defenses. Well, in the first game, we saw them switch to that zone late in the game, which kind of threw the Mercury off of their flow offensively. Second game, we saw a lot of heavy man-to-man. In this game, we saw a box and one is what they started off with, and then they kind of switched back to that man. But Sophia, in your opinion, how much is presenting, these different defenses maybe throwing off the Mercury's rhythm?
It 100% is. I feel like one of our biggest takeaways from game 2 was that the Mercury just really looked out of sorts offensively. And so for the Aces to just throw different schemes and force them to be out of the rhythm, have to run different sets, get different looks, it really does throw off that flow and just the touches where they're coming from. You talk about that box and one where they had it against Alyssa Thomas. That one was just, I first saw it in the game, I was like, "What are they doing?" Because Alyssa Thomas, she was like wide open, but she was wide open. She took her dribble into the right at the free throw line and she missed the shot. And I think just changing up the looks just enough makes these players hesitate, which then can cause some of those misses because we've seen a team knock down that midi jumper a lot before. But it really just took Phoenix out of their rhythm. They weren't really able to get into one until later in the game. And just as a team, they had 8 steals and 8 blocks. So a lot of heavy pressure going on the perimeter and by the rim.
That's an interesting point that you brought up too, because I had the same reaction and they replayed it where it's just like, I feel like you could see Alyssa Thomas kind of questioning it a little bit too. She's like, so no one's going to guard me. And she's like, all right, cool. But then she did end up missing it. And that wasn't necessarily a consistent theme for her. She still had a good game, but it's certain small aspects like that do throw a player off of their original game because we've seen her knock those down all season long. So really it should just be routine muscle memory for her to be. And you wanted to see her capitalize on that a little bit more if they're like, okay, if you're going to sag off on me, boom, I'm just going to make you guys come up and guard me at this point. We didn't necessarily see that. So credit to the Aces for sticking to their defensive schemes and their defensive plans and really executing on it for a majority of the game. Obviously, these are 2 teams in the finals. There's going to be slip-ups at some point, but overall, they've been really steady in what they've done. And free throw wise, the Aces had a good amount of paint touches as well, but I think the Mercury came out with a really strong defense in that first quarter. And the Aces shot them right out of that because they were shooting we have to give credit to the Aces because they are also doing this in an opposing arena where the Mercury fans were so excited, obviously, to be there, to have the first game there of these finals. They had all the support in the world. And to what you said, kind of silence the crowd and shoot the living daylights out of the ball in the first quarter. I mean, that's just, it's difficult to come back from when you get put in a hole like that.
Exactly. And threes can just be so much more demoralizing than twos, especially the way that Las Vegas was getting them. It felt like, again, just pushing, initiating early offense, and then they would get into the paint either by dribble penetration or post entry. And then Phoenix, everyone's heads would turn, everyone would collapse down into the interior, and then it would just be a spray out and then three. And it just felt like it was another after another after another for the Las Vegas Aces. And they were just really able to capitalize on their spacing. They have so many offensive weapons that it's like you really have to kind of pick and choose. I think Nate Tibbetts was talking about pregame. He was like, yeah, Asia's going to get hers, but it's about also controlling the others. And I mean, I felt like for this game, Asia got hers and she really did her big one. But if that's going to be your game plan, then you have to make sure like, hey, you got to live with that single coverage and not let all of the other eyes on the court then turn into her direction and ignore some of the other players that are out on the perimeter.
We'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about the Mercury in our next segment, but it obviously also pertains to the Aces, where Asia Wilson has also done a good job no matter what defender has been on her in terms of, the Mercury's defensive assignments. Obviously, she had AT. DeWanna Bonner was on her today. And I do believe for some portions of the game, DeWanna Bonner was able to give her a little bit more trouble, just being a new look, being a little bit more to her size comparison. But yeah, it's so hard to slow down Asia. And I think Nate Tibbetts is trying to figure that out to each game. But again, it gives even more credit to what the Aces were doing, where they were still allowing each other to play in this space. And no matter what these, defensive assignments looked like today, again, from the Mercury. And when you have so many weapons, Asia gave credit post game to the Mercury for having 3-level scorers on basically the entire roster. You have to look at the Aces and say the same thing, because they can get those midi shots off. They were shooting the lights out of the perimeter, and obviously within the paint, having a field day as well when you think of Asia Wilson. But even Asia Wilson, I need to see a shot chart of what she had today. But she was everywhere. Like, she is also another player that is just, again, I can't keep harping on her enough. She's just so difficult to defend. And so for, again, these Aces to come together and kind of rally around her, but also get their own while she's getting hers, is just really impressive work.
100%. And a lot of those just cross matches and then they lead to scrambles. The Aces did a great job getting to the free throw line today. Asia, for one, did an outstanding job, but they were 23 of 25. That is an amazing percentage. So they did their job from there, and just a lot of credit to everyone being aggressive and having the mindset to attack, to try to get and to try to draw those fouls, get to the line, and get some of those easy points. I think that was a huge boost to their offense as well, because it put a lot of the Phoenix Mercury players into foul trouble, which then makes them play a little bit more conservative. And then you have other options opening up because you're the one being aggressive and they don't want to foul you.
Absolutely right. We love getting all this information from your analyst brain, Sophia. Thank you so much for this insight. We're going to get into what the Mercury have been doing. But again, credit to them for putting up such a fantastic fight today. We'll talk a little bit more about them after this.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And coming into this game, the Phoenix Mercury were favored by 3.5 points. didn't really end up being the case, but for next game, as I'm checking out my FanDuel sportsbook right now, the Las Vegas Aces are favored by 2.5. So they agree with our Locked On Women's Basketball podcast that the Aces will complete the sweep. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started.
I love when people agree with us. That's so wonderful. I mean, we may have gotten it wrong on our last podcast, but we're moving on. Today's a new day. But now we're taking a look at the Mercury, of course. I want to say that they came back from a 17-point deficit at the end of the third quarter to tie the game and then only lose by 2. That has been their storyline the entire season. And coming into this, Alyssa Thomas, Nate Tibbetts, everyone basically said, they love an underdog story. That has been what Mercury basketball has been all season long. They have been the underdogs, and they have kept showing their fight and keeping themselves within the playoffs to make it to the finals. So no matter the outcome of today's game, they have a lot to be, I know they would be disappointed, but they still have so much to be proud of in terms of just their fight and resilience through the whole game.
Exactly. It was really looking like the Aces were just going to run away with this one. They were playing so well, just everything orchestrating and operating at such a high level. And like you said, the Phoenix Mercury did a great job just battling back. And I felt like they really just got back to their roots as a defensive minded team. They were putting a lot of pressure on their perimeter players, not allowing them to get downhill as easily. Again, Asia's going to get hers, but if you can kind of limit some of the others, that really, really helps your case. And it did that for the Mercury. And we actually saw more of those fast break opportunities as well, where Alyssa Thomas is just barreling right down the middle of the floor and kicking out or finishing herself. So I felt like they did a great job getting back to that, and just a lot of credit to their tenacity and their relentlessness to give up.
You took the words right out of my mouth, because as soon as I saw AT start pushing transition, I think there was one play she had gotten a defensive rebound and she was just off and she's barreling through everyone. But that's when the Mercury are at their best. That's when Alyssa Thomas is at her best. So to your point, they got back to their own identity. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough today, but I really want to hone in even more on just that 17-point deficit that they came back from. A lot of that push was also because of Satou Sabally. She, I feel like, had a very strong game today as well. She looked more to herself in that final quarter when they were able to get that deficit within single digits. She went down with a very scary injury. She hit her head on one of the Aces players' knees, and again, all of this is non-intentional, and there was a foul call, but it was prior to having anything to do with the injury. But she hit her head very hard, and it was a scary sight to see her not being able to get back up. So the fact that, she was able to get up on her own accord and probably going through concussion protocol now, but you can tell that put a lot of fire behind them to play for her. Everybody knows how special she is for that team. She's literally the unicorn. That's what she is, a unicorn. But even Kalia Copper, she had 2 and 1s after that. She had a 3. Like, she put them right back in the game. And she wasn't having a great game before that. I think prior to that, she had only had like 7 points leading up to that. But it's nice to see. It's not nice to see Satou fall, but it is very nice to see that it gave them an extra boost of like, hey, we really need to fight and get back in this. But yeah, that was a scary thing to watch from Satou.
It definitely was, and very unfortunate. Like you said, it was definitely unintentional, no malicious intent there, but She was really wobbly when she got up, had to be assisted off the court and just headed straight back to the locker room. So we're hoping the best for her because she'll be a huge piece and just, health wise. You want to make sure that she's all intact, but that really did help to kind of light a fire within the Phoenix Mercury. You talk about Copper just doing her thing. She really came alive because she had a little bit of a quiet night up until that point. But then you talk about the back to backs or the and ones, the 3-pointer that was huge, just really firing up the Phoenix home crowd as well. And honestly, huge props to DeWanna Bonner. I think we've been talking about on this podcast, we're wondering when she'll have a typical DeWanna Bonner performance. I mean, she has more playoff game experience than anyone else in WNBA history. And she finished with 25 points, 10 rebounds, had some huge plays down the stretch to keep it close and then tie it. She was a roll of the ball away from tying it and sending it to overtime. It was actually a really crazy play. The inbounds pass with zero point 0.3 seconds left, and zero point 0.3 is enough to catch and shoot, but it has to be really fast. And she kind of caught it facing the sideline and then turned her body midair and shot it. And it was really close. So, a lot of credit for her and just trying to get this one out for her team.
If she had tied it up, I would have lost my mind. And I actually would have been so happy for Phoenix because they fought through that game. Like, truthfully, I felt like they almost deserved it at the end just for that role to just get in there. But to your point, we spoke about how important bench production was going to be for the Mercury in this one. And especially when you're thinking of that bench production, DeWanna Bonner is obviously going to be coming to mind. But 25 points, 10 rebounds compared to her last time out when they were back in Vegas. Very significant difference. This is, the third time all leading scorer of the WNBA that we think of when we think of DeWanna Bonner. This is what she was looking like when they were going up against the Lynx and in those late game pushes to win that series. So it's really nice to see her going back into those ways and trying to keep that consistency from her. And then obviously back to Alyssa Thomas, who had 9 assists. She was more on track to what she's typically have done all season with the 14 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists. She's averaging around 15 points throughout the season and around 9 assists throughout the season too. So AT has been consistent in what she is doing. It's more just there's still not a full 40-minute game out of the Mercury right now. I think that's what a lot of it comes down to. And a lot of that comes to them getting defensive stops. I think they come out really strong defensively. Even offensively, they come out very strong. But once they have a couple of those breakdowns, and Vegas is obviously a team that can break you down relatively easy just with the amount of scoring threats that they have. They can, again, they're 3-level scorers throughout the entire roster. So once the Mercury are broken down defensively a little bit, it does seem like it takes them a quarter and a half to sometimes come back because we keep seeing these fourth quarter pushes that look fantastic by them. I mean, again, 17-point deficit to tie the game up and only lose by 2. That is an incredible effort in just one quarter. That's 10 minutes to work with. You are busting your butt to try and even this thing out. But I think a lot of it also just comes after halftime. Like the third quarter is just not looking very strong for that.
Yeah, it's really those middle 2 quarters, honestly. I mean, they had a quick start and then drop off in the second quarter, drop off in the third, and then it picked back up in the fourth. And this has been another kind of consistent theme throughout the series against the Aces. But yeah, the Mercury just needs to put together 40 minutes of consistent basketball. And a lot of credit to the Aces for essentially taking them out of that. And you talk about just the defense and some of those breakdowns, and how I mentioned with the Aces 3-point shooting, it just felt like all eyes were turned on whenever someone was entering the paint, and then it was maybe like I felt like 5 feet of closeout to get to some of these 3-point shooters. So they had time and space to knock those down for the Aces. And another thing I would bring up is Phoenix. They were definitely very aggressive. We talked about Alyssa Thomas. She's barreling down the lane But as a team, they shot 31 free throws, which is great, but they only made 23. So that's kind of the game right there. When you look at that stat, it's pretty glaring.
Yeah, and typically a team that I believe during the broadcast, they mentioned that they shot 78% from free throw throughout the season. So they've had a pretty strong free throw percentage, but we saw that, in the first game with AT missing 2 of the free throws towards the end, sometimes it really does come down to just some of those easy buckets that can hurt you later down the road, especially when you're clawing your way back like that against an Aces team that seems to have all the momentum. We'll be excited to talk about their final game on Friday, but make sure that you tune in with us again tomorrow because we always have more things to yap about. Sophia, thank you so much, as always, for your insight. Make sure to follow us on our social media handles, and we will see you again shortly. Thank you so much for coming on to Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily